Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Late Night Hockey with Steven Psihogios. I'm Steven Psihogios, and tonight I'm joined by Ryan Sura, the lead NHL editor at sportsbettingdime.com. Ryan, thank you so much. For those of you who don't know, Ryan and I, we both went to the sport media program at Ryerson University. That's how we came to know each other. So, Ryan, thanks so much for joining the show tonight. How you been?
I've been good. I've been good. As good as everyone has been through everything going on this past year. But excited. We have some sports to talk about and analyze because at this point last year, things were starting to shut down. But yeah, excited to be on the show, and thanks for having me.
No worries. Yeah, we got sports to talk, analyze, and bet on, and that's what we're going to focus at the first portion of the show is some best future bets moving forward in the NHL. And the first one we're going to start off with is best Stanley Cup future bet. Ryan, with the numbers right now, which team do you like as far as the best number on the board for a futures bet for the Cup?
Yeah, there's a few that jump out for sure. Myself, I had the Penguins, the Hurricanes, and the Avalanche as my three preseason Stanley Cup futures picks. But recently, looking at the odds, the New York Islanders are a team that have been playing extremely well. Another win against the Devils tonight, 3-2, after being down 2-1. They've looked really good, and I think at their price right now on DraftKings, they're offered at 22-1. I'm sure that price will start to come down a little bit heading into this week, and especially with how well they've been playing. But both their goaltenders have been lights out recently. Varlamov setting the standard for a starting goaltender in the NHL, and probably the best goaltender in the East right now. And then even their rookie now, Sorokin, starting to play really well. 5 straight wins, 2 shutouts in those wins as well. And they just have a lot of good depth right now. That's really they've been using to their advantage, especially with some of the rookies that they have. Oliver Wahlstrom's been unbelievable. Same with Kiefer Bellows. So I think that's a team you should really look for to drop some money on right now because their price will come down, and it has started to come down already. Their average odds on our tracker on the for the Stanley Cup has gone down from 22-1 to about 15. So there's places where you can get a good edge at about 20-1, and I think that's a good price to kind of pull the trigger right now for sure.
Yeah, always important to shop around. I like the Islanders, and good that you mentioned Wahlstrom too, because Barry Trotz, with the latest injury now to Anders Lee, he said he's got no problem, keeping the line chemistry together on the second and third line by propping Wahlstrom up to Anders Lee's spot. So I do like the Islanders. The team that I looked at when I was running down the numbers, though, let me know what you think about this one. I like the Blues plus 3,000 right now. I think that's a nice little number to get, especially because you look at the way St. Louis has played this year. They haven't been horrible, but they've dealt with a lot of injuries. You have players like Colton Parayko, Jaden Schwartz, Tyler Bozak, and Vladimir Tarasenko, who they just got back. They've all missed a decent chunk of time. And I think Parayko's the big one there right now as far as guys that are still absent because they haven't looked the most sound defensively as of late. So I think with no Parayko in the lineup, it definitely makes things harder because he's such a good defenseman. And, they've got the Stanley Cup pedigree as it is, right? They won the Cup a couple years ago. There's a lot of talent on that roster. I like what I've seen from young players when they're healthy, like guys like Robert Thomas, who's also dealt with injuries this year. And then you also have Jordan Kyrou as well. So I think they've got some interesting young talent, and plus 3,000 to me is a nice number. And they're a team, too, that really, I think the hardest part for them is getting out of that division because that's a tough division when you look at the Colorado Avalanche, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and then you also throw in the Wild, how good they've played this year. I think that's going to be the toughest step for them. But if they're able to get some hot goaltending from Jordan Binnington, I think they're good enough to make a run. What do you think about the Blues as a potential? You're getting pretty good odds here at plus 3,000.
Yeah, no, 30-1's a great price on the Blues right now. Like you said, they've struggled. I think the loss of Pietrangelo has definitely hurt them on the defensive side, especially with Parayko being their second defenseman, whether it be on the offensive end or defensive end. So I think 30-1 right now, and I think who knows, maybe Binnington will get motivated after signing that new contract. And like you said, getting out of that division is the hardest part. I think they'll be able to make the playoffs. It's a pretty top-heavy division. And I think kind of the Coyotes are really, or maybe even Kings are the ones really pushing them for that fourth final spot because it seems like the Wild will secure that third spot or even second spot, depending on how everything finishes out. But At that price, you never know what happens in the playoffs. Like you said, if Bennington can get hot in the first round when they play either Vegas or Colorado, I think you'll be sitting pretty at this point if you're taking them at plus 3,000.
Agreed. I think just looking at it, the goaltending is so big come playoff time. And while Kakkonen's been great for the Wild, and we haven't seen a whole lot of Grubauer because of the injuries, he could be an X factor if they were to go up against the Wild, or, for example, they go up against the Avalanche. So that was my pick. Next, we move to divisional odds. With the divisions shaping place, there's still, even at the midway point, a lot to be determined in a lot of divisions. Even Toronto now doesn't seem as safe of a bet to win the North. Now that Winnipeg, we know that they beat them tonight on Saturday. So what divisional odd do you like so far for a team right now?
One price that really sticks out to me, and I was looking at it yesterday, and then today again, they're continuing to kind of just flatline a little bit, and it's your team, Steve. It's the Bruins. Right now, they're on DraftKings. They're being offered a price at around 3-1 plus 275 ish, depending on what book you look at. And because right now, with how well the Islanders have been playing, and I think they're a good Stanley Cup bet, but I still think the Bruins will end up winning this division. And right now they have a couple, like Rask just got hurt. Halak hasn't been playing as well as we've seen him play in the past. DeBrusk is out on COVID protocol. They're still working on a few things on the defensive side as well. Charlie McAvoy has been exceptional this year, but I think they're in a little bit of a rut, and it's a good time to take advantage of their odds. They're only 6 points behind the Islanders, and the Islanders have 2 or 3 games in hand. And after tonight's win, they'll get an extra jump after beating the Devils, the Islanders. But I think at 3-1, the Bruins would be a really good price, and to get on it sooner than later, because they'll start to heat up again. And once they start playing those teams that they've been beating, like Buffalo, and even I know a slow start against the Rangers, tough 4-0 loss, but I think 3-1 is a great price for the Bruins to take right now.
I like that too, because Boston, while these other teams, like you look at Washington and the Islanders, they've been, and Philadelphia too, they've been getting fat on beating up on Buffalo. The Bruins still haven't played Buffalo. And this transitions well to my pick. I'm staying inside the East Division. I like Pittsburgh at plus 525. Again, a little bit of a juicier price you get on this one. But I like Pittsburgh because they haven't played New Jersey once yet, and they've just started to play the Sabres now. They played 2 games this week. They've picked up their 4 points against Buffalo. So they've been able to kind of hang in there despite a rough start. And now you can get them plus 525 at DraftKings we were talking about, which is a good price. And obviously shop around. You can see where you can get it. I know this number earlier in the week, based on the sports betting time numbers, was up at around plus 1,200. So beating Buffalo a couple of times has definitely helped bring that price down a little bit. But I still like the number. You get a bunch of games against New Jersey. And since bringing in Brian Burke and Ron Hextall, since shaking things up in the front office, including the win tonight, they're 12-4-0 Pittsburgh. They're rolling right now. They've seen better play out of Tristan Jarry. And the one guy I think is making a big difference is Evgeny Malkin. If you look at it, coming into tonight, he had 9 points in his last 6 games. So he has definitely gotten things going after a slow start as well. So funny that we both picked East Division teams there. I do see your logic too on Boston. I follow them closely. I think with them, it's just been rough, that this little stretch that they've been on right now. There hasn't been a lot of secondary scoring. David Krejci just scored his first goal of the year. Jake DeBrusk was stuck on 1 goal for the longest time. He just scored his second. Craig Smith is only at 4 or 5 goals. So they're not seeing the depth scoring that you'd like to see. If that can change, or if they shake things up, for sure. So funny that we both picked East Division teams. Next,
yeah, definitely.
Next part of the show I want to get to is the Calder odds. And before we talk about current prices, I got to give a big shout out to Ryan. If you go and look over at Sports Betting Time, his pick before the season started to win the Calder was Kirill Kaprizov, and he had that number at plus 400. So you're not seeing that number on the board anymore with Kirill, because, you saw him score a hat trick last night, and he's just been awesome. So kudos to you, Ryan. That was a good call.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I was super high on the Wild in general coming into the season. I thought, like we said, we were talking about the West Division before, it's pretty top-heavy division, and I thought they'd be able to get a lot of value early on in the season against teams like the Kings, taking them on the puck line, or even playing against the Coyotes as well, like we saw last night. And then Kaprizov, he's been unbelievable. I looked at him this year, kind of how Panarin came into the league and won the Calder Trophy, and I used that comparison because I think it's very valid. He's 23 years old, coming in a lot older than some of these guys like Tim Stützle and Josh Norris and some of the other contenders for the Calder Trophy this year. But he's really he hit the ground running, and he never let his foot off the gas pedal. Like you said, hat trick last night. He has 10 goals, 13 assists. Doesn't really seem like anyone's capturing him is going to catch up to him at this point. At minus 260 now on FanDuel, I'm seeing live odds for him to win the Calder. The closest to him right now is Kevin Lankinen, who started to digress a little bit after a really hot start for the Blackhawks. So, I was super high on Kaprizov coming into this season, and I'm glad I got him at the price I did, because if I would have waited, it wouldn't have lasted for sure.
No, and he hit the ground running, like you said, and it helps that added years of maturity that he has on a lot of other rookies in this class. He's already played pro for a decent amount of time too, so that is definitely working in his favor. But as far as other numbers go right now, if you were to take a stab at one of these other guys, it doesn't seem like there's a major case you can make for a whole lot of other guys on the board. But if you were to have to swing one way or the other, where would you kind of go on this?
At one point in the season, I was actually looking at Ty Smith, because the Devils were starting to play a lot better. And he's playing on in that second D pair with Vatanen, and he's been playing, Severson, and he's been playing really well as a shutdown D, and even like on the offensive end, just showing his skill set all over the ice. And looking at Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes last year, I thought, there could have been a little bit of a bias towards defensemen maybe winning again this year. But now his price is a little high, around plus 750, and same with Josh Norris, who started off hot and was pretty close with Kaprizov in the starting of the season in his start price, and then kind of a couple games, 10 games in. And then two guys that really have just fallen off are Lafreniere and Shesterkin. They were both the top two favorites heading into this season. Lafreniere at plus 150 starting the season, or plus 300. So two guys that a lot of people thought were going to start off really well, especially Shesterkin having those games beforehand, being able to play a couple games last season, show kind of his worth. And I think that's why the odds makers favored that. But at this point, it's Kaprizov's trophy to lose. And I think it'll be pretty hard to give it to someone else at this point.
I agree. And that's why I think if you're going to make a bet on this, the one guy who I do think is actually worth at the price taking a stab at, like I said, I think this is Kaprizov's pretty much lock and key. But if you're going to give any guy a shot, if you want to throw a dart, I think it is Lafreniere, because the one thing that he definitely has working in his favor that Kaprizov doesn't is that he plays in a big market. So if he's somehow able to get the ball rolling down the stretch, and at plus 2,600, it's really inflated after this recent dry spell he's been on. If he could somehow get this thing going, because it's not out of the picture for rookie to start out of the gate slowly and kind of find his way midway through the season. So if he's somehow able to turn this around, he's the first overall pick. He's got that massive market working in his favor. I could potentially see it. It would have to be a best case scenario, but you're really at this point, there's no sense in I think picking anyone else besides either him if you want to take a real deep shot, or Kaprizov, because I don't know what else. Like, the only thing that could hurt Kaprizov is playing in Minnesota. It's a smaller market, and then Lafreniere just goes off and takes over the headlines, Ryan. Like, I don't see much else.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. It's tough because the Rangers, they've underperformed almost all around this season. I think a lot of fans were excited to see them play in this really tough East Division and compete. And, they're starting to play a little bit better. They've had off-ice issues, obviously, with Artemi Panarin. And, Lafreniere and Shesterkin really didn't hit the ground running like Kaprizov did. And I think it'll be hard now to give Lafreniere the trophy, just because it'll be tough for the Rangers to get into the playoffs. And he's fallen so far behind. But at a long shot price like that, why not? I think with anyone at this point, you're almost fishing for value. So I would personally stay away from any other future or Calder bets. But if anything, just lay the hammer on Kaprizov, just go all in on him, because it seems like he'll be taking home the hardware. So
Agreed. Yeah, that number's not getting any better for Kaprizov.
yeah,
I don't see. Yeah, you're not. It's not going to turn into plus money anytime soon. So you know what? You might
no.
as well take it while you can. So that's going to finish up the betting section of the show. Let's transition to the Montreal Canadiens. I know this is a team that you follow closely, and not a great game tonight. They started it off very poor against Calgary, got behind early, and they just were never able to catch up. The game evened out, I think, a little bit, but I don't know how much of that was due to Calgary just, under Daryl Sutter, just looking to shut this thing down and not take too many risks as much as it was Montreal playing well. So their record now goes to 3-3-3 under Dominic Ducharme since he's taken over. So that leads me to ask this first question. What major changes? It's been 9 games. It's not a huge sample size. And of course it happened in season, but what have you made of the Canadiens since firing Claude Julien and appointing Ducharme as the head coach?
Well, we've obviously seen a pretty big turnover in their coaching staff in general, right? Claude Julien going as well. And then Kirk Muller, the assistant coach, also letting go someone who a lot of people thought was kind of a front runner along with Ducharme to be the next head coach for the Canadiens. And then also you have Alex Burrows coming in and helping out on the power play. And since he's come in, obviously their power play has been a lot better. Their offensive chances, in my opinion, you've seen an increase in them. But the one thing, and it's been the same problem even since Claude Julien was the coach, is they're not playing a full 60-minute game. And you saw it tonight. They got outshot and dominated in the first period. They started to crawl back, but unfortunately they don't have, other than that top line, they don't have the offensive talent for one guy to really change it every single night. It changes depending on who has the hot hand. We saw Toffoli at the beginning of the year and Josh Anderson were putting up crazy numbers. Toffoli was a front runner for the Rocket Richard 2 weeks in, which was pretty funny. But I think that's still a big problem that they're going to have to check in. And then the one positive is you're seeing Carey Price play a little bit better now with the change of Ducharme, and then also goaltending coach Sean Burke, who's come in and from what I've heard, he's been quite the goalie guru. Worked in Arizona for a bit, GM for Team Canada for a couple seasons in the Olympics with the amateur team. So it seems like things are starting to turn around, but it's the same sort of problems of not being able to finish games and not keeping the momentum in our favor or in the Habs' favor when those games come along, when they have a 2-1 lead and can't close out. And Ottawa has been our kryptonite this year. So we'll have to figure that out somehow, because they can't keep losing games to them.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love what Burrows has done with the power play, and a lot's been made about his impact on the team. But at 5-5, I haven't really seen this team take a major step forward as far as generating offensive chances and generating high-end offensive chances at even strength. The one big difference, and you touched upon it, was the way Carey Price has played. Him and Jake Allen, since the firing, have kind of done a Freaky Friday. They've kind of switched bodies, because Allen's numbers have come down noticeably, but Price's numbers have been very good. Like coming into tonight, he had a .935 save percentage and a 1.78 goals against average. So he'd been playing well. Wasn't really helped out a lot by his defense, especially you look at that Sean Monahan goal, that first one tonight. Like you said, this team, it just feels like they're missing that one guy who can take over a game offensively. I think that is the only knock on Montreal, because they got the depth offensively, they got the depth defensively. We can see right now with the way Price is playing, he's there, but I don't know. That one player who can take over a game, and maybe Suzuki develops into that. I like his 200-foot game. He's a very complete player, but I don't know, Ryan. I think they're just that one guy away. And do you see any answers on the roster or in the pipeline right now as far as someone who can come over and be that guy?
I mean, as a hopeful Canadiens fan and supporter, everyone's looking at Cole Caulfield right now as being this next guy to come in. He's been a superstar for Wisconsin this year. I'm sure he'll be a finalist for the Hobey Baker or a top award in the NCAA. But as of right now, I agree. Suzuki was playing at a great rate at the beginning of the season. He was scoring a lot of goals. He was becoming that playmaking center that we really needed, who could also put pucks in the net that the Habs haven't had for a really long time. So as of right now, I think getting into the playoffs and then minimizing the little mistakes is huge. Like even tonight, they're on they pulled Carey Price in Calgary zone with under a minute left. They just called a timeout and Suzuki forgets to come on the ice, and they were playing 5-on-5 for 20 seconds or something like that, wherever it was, like things like that. And I think they're giving up too many breakaways and 2-on-1 chances. And I think that also reflected on Price's numbers for a certain stretch where he wasn't playing very well. And then I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, Steve, but I've been a big advocate for Carey Price getting rid of those red pads that he's been wearing, because he's played terribly in it. And, goalies are stereotypical. So I feel like getting rid of those red pads would help him a lot. And since Sean Burke's come in, I think he did switch his pads. And since then, I think he's 3-0-1, other than tonight was his first regulation loss in those new pads. But he's been playing a lot better. And I think there's a lot to, as a Canadiens fan supporter, there's a lot to look forward to in the future. It might not be this year, there's a lot of turnover, but there's a lot of good things to look forward to.
I agree. Goalies are their own separate entity on the team. You just leave them alone. They got their superstitions. You don't want to mess them up at all, because wrong move, you screw up the entire game. So no, I agree with you. I think Price and Caulfield, especially, you mentioned too, that's someone who has been generating a lot of buzz at the NCAA level. And let's not make it all negatives with Montreal. Let's talk about some positives. And one guy who's been a major positive, I've been a big fan of his game for a long time, has been Jeff Petrie this year. And what he's doing as far as putting the puck in the net, he's been unbelievable. Not just putting the puck in the net, but just getting on the score sheet. Jeff Petrie has been excellent. Maybe this is just because I really like the guy as a player, but a dark horse candidate for the Norris Trophy, Jeff Petrie. He's
for sure
good.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're 100% right. He scored again tonight, the lone goal from Montreal, and it seems like he's always on the score sheet. He's a huge leader on the power play and off the ice. And just the whole Montreal defensive core has played really well. Shea Weber, he's starting to lose a little bit of his speed, but he's still advantageous to the Canadiens purely because of his shot and the things he does on the power play and the little things he does kind of in the defensive end. But, he's getting a little slower. Joel Edmondson leads the league in plus minus. He is the best plus minus in the NHL. So there's a lot of good pickups and additions that the Canadiens can focus on this year, including Josh Anderson and Corey Perry. There's a lot of little random pickups that the Habs have done in the past that haven't really worked out, have started to work out this year. And I think that was reflected in their hot start because teams weren't expecting it. But Jeff Petrie, for sure, has been one of those guys who's helped the Habs get to where they are now. He's a guy who I'm sure holds them together day to day. So I think the last time I saw his price was about 10-1 to win the Norris. I'm sure it might be a little shorter than that now, but still, there's a lot up in the air for that trophy right now in the odds. So I would definitely take a chance on Petrie. He has a really good shot.
I agree. You look at guys like Victor Hedman, he's always up as far as a favorite to win that award. But when you get a special performance from a guy like Jeff Petrie, who's been a veteran, he's been in the league for a long time, not a bad idea to take a little stab at that price. So, Ryan, before we wrap this thing up, I always do this before the show ends. Guest choice. Is there anything from the hockey world on your mind? Maybe you got another best bet that you've got up your sleeve that you jumped on this week, or it could be anything. What would you like to talk about?
The last, putting me on the spot here, Steve.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just kidding. There was one. I took Steven Stamkos to win the Rocket Richard before the season started, and at about 18 or 20-1, and that was one bet that I was really intrigued by and excited for because we haven't seen Stamkos back in full action in a couple years, or about a year, right, with all the injuries he suffered. So, and I thought with Kucherov out, he'd be great. Obviously, with the COVID pauses, he hasn't played as many games as everybody else, but he's still kind of in the running for it. I mean, Austin Matthews is a whole another beast in terms of scoring goals this year, especially that stretch he went through. But if you can get him at a price around 25-1 right now, plus 2,500, I would definitely take a shot on it. And then another bet that, I haven't really monitored the game yet, but we've got over 6.5 in the Canucks Oilers game tonight, Steve. So we're hoping for that. And praying to the gambling gods that we can end Saturday night with a win.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Based off the defense I've seen from the Canucks and Oilers this year, plus the taking the over on that game, even at 6.5, isn't a bad idea whatsoever. So that's gonna do it for this episode of Late Night Hockey. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on to the show, giving us some of your best picks. I know I put you on the spot. I do it on purpose. I want to see what I can get. I want to see what I can get out of my guests. So no, I really do appreciate you coming on the show, Ryan. It was much appreciated, and it was good to catch up too.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, Steve. I had a ton of fun talking betting with you.